Hey everybody, it's Chris with Life 180, and welcome to this third part of my review of Doug Andrews' book, The Laser Fund. And so this is the first iteration. I'm going to be doing this actually live. And you know what? I just figured I'm here. I didn't have a chance to film some videos because of some projects I've been working on at night. And so I had a little time, and I figured I'd hop on here. And I pretty much, everything I do is live anyway. I don't clip much out. I just let it rip. So why not do it live? So here we go. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go over here. I got to get to the right page. If anybody has any questions, comments when I'm going through this, I'll try to come around and get to it. But ultimately, I'm going to try to just focus on the conversation so I don't get distracted because I am doing this during the day. I have a couple appointments I got to deal with and whatnot, and so I want to get through this and make sure I stay as succinct as possible, because I find as I go through this, the content creates a habit for me to get distracted and go on tangents and all that stuff. So let's get into this though. So chapter number 3 is of the Laser Fund ebook. It is about what successful folks know. So that is the chapter title. It goes into this thing. I'm going to skip through this a little bit. Ultimately, what he talks about is the importance of predictability, right? He talks about an example and kind of an exercise he does with people as they go to his live events, and talks about how you can walk people down this process, and if you ask the right questions in the right way, you can come up with a predictable answer, and it talks about the importance of predictability. Basically, he goes into this, and I agree with a lot of what he's saying, is like predictability is super critical in all aspects of life. And, I believe that. I'm a huge believer that making sure that you have a financial strategy that will create predictable results, that you understand the moving parts in the financial vehicles that you're using, and making sure that you know that if you put money into a financial strategy, that worst case scenario, you know where you're going to be in 10 years, And I think it's funny and a bit ironic that he's using this example and talking about the importance of predictability, when in fact, Index Universal Life policies that he uses as the core foundational product as this laser fund goes is not a predictable vehicle at all. He talks about the fact that, we all know the upside potential, the downside protection, but that has nothing to do with the predictability of the overall production of and efficiency and effectiveness and actual internal rate of return of these vehicles in general. In fact, if anything, he's super misleading, because he talks a lot about the fact that you could get 7% returns inside of this policy, 6% returns, when the internal rate of return is in fact much lower. So I'm gonna, once again, as I've done in my last ones, in my last reviews of these chapters, I've gone through, I've read it, I've got notes. You can see I've got green where I believe I kind of agree with what he's saying, and red where I disagree. So he's just talking about predictable things in life, things that we need to plan around, like taxes. They're always going to be there. They're going to go up over time. We know that that's the case, and so on and so forth. So he talks about these 3 marvels are what affluent and successful folks have implemented for generations: compound interest, tax-favored accumulation, and safe, positive leverage. So I agree with that. You need to have compounding interest. You need to take advantage of that. You need to have a tax-favored accumulation vehicle. I agree with that. And I agree that you need safe, positive leverage. He's 100% right. And so this is the thing about this that just drives me insane, is that he's using all the right principles. And when you listen to him and you read this book, if you didn't know what I know about this stuff, like you're gonna read this and you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this makes sense. This is what I want. The problem is you can't, an IUL is not safe, positive leverage. So I want to use this as an example. You can see a CV Lock won't use IULs. So that's a little note I have to myself to talk about the fact that, listen, if you wanted to go get a cash value line of credit, you can go to a bank and you could say, listen, I have a life insurance policy, and I have $100,000 of cash value in that life insurance policy. And because of that, I would love to get a line of credit leveraging that policy guaranteeing, using it as collateral to get this line of credit, kind of like you would do with a home equity line of credit. I have equity in my home. Can I get a line of credit for that equity? Same thing with a life insurance policy. I have cash value in my policy. Can I get a line of credit for that cash value? So what the bank is going to do is they're going to say, what kind of policy is it? It's great that you have 100 grand, phenomenal. What kind of policy is it? If you tell them it's a whole life insurance policy, they're going to give you the cash value line of credit. If you tell them that it's an index universal life policy, they're going to shut you down. They're not going to give you a line of credit. Why? Because it's not predictable. It's not leverageable. Like it's not guaranteed. There's a lot of risk in it. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of variables that the insurance company controls the moving parts in this policy. And so no third-party bank is going to allow you to use that as collateral when they know that, you know, there are factors outside of just your behavior, your actions, and whatnot that are going to impact the actual value of that policy. So the fact that, listen, I know there are a lot of people out here that probably think I'm crazy for banging on IULs all the time. I don't think they're the horrible, like the worst thing in the world, but I do think they're the most missold product in the world. I absolutely think they're the most missold financial vehicle on the face of the planet right now. And I got news for all of you agents that think that IUL is a safe, predictable upside, potential downside protection, predictable way to grow money. That's the key with this section, this chapter, is predictability. If it were predictable, then a third-party bank would let you leverage it in that capacity. I like to use common sense in these scenarios. If it were predictable, if the results in an IUL were predictable, there's two components to it. A bank would let you use it for a cash value line of credit, and if the results in the indexing strategy created predictable results that were sustainable over a long period of time, in an environment that we're in today where insurance companies are having a hard time gaining 4% returns on their general funds, don't you think the insurance company, if this strategy for indexing that was kicking out 6%, and that's conservative, as most agents say, if that were realistic from a conservative perspective, don't you think the general account, the general fund, the life insurance company itself would be using this strategy for a bigger portion of the general fund, not just eking out 4% or 3.5% like they are? So when you think about the predictability of like what to grow your money at, not that IULs are bad, but when we talk about predictability, I think it's important to understand what are the metrics that we're putting at that. I would say if you're predictably going to have returns of 4% in an IUL, now we're talking predictability. That's okay. If we're talking 6 and 7%, that's not predictable at all. And in fact, it's actually super bad, super destructive, super counterproductive when you're expecting that 6 and 7% predictable return, but then you end up getting 4. That actually hurts you immensely in the long run. And so that I have a huge problem with. So now he gets into the marvel of compounding interest. He talks about it. Straightforward. This is kind of 101 stuff, I guess, if you're new to the world of personal finance and personal finance, understanding the difference between how simple interest works and compounding interest works is really important to understand. So I'm not going to get into this. I've done other videos on this. This section of his book where he talks about this is actually really good. It explains the difference between the two. It explains how compounding works, talking about, you know, if you have a lily pad on a pond and the lily pad doubles every day and it takes 48 days to cover the pond, how long does it take to fill half of the pond? Well, the answer is 47 days because it's doubling every day. So the 47th day, half the pond is covered, then it doubles, the whole pond is covered. It talks about how the power of compounding interest works for you. The longer you let it work for you, the more powerful it is. Taking advantage of that, avoiding losses, one of the greatest, there are two huge impact factors when it comes to interrupting compounding. Taxes is one of them and losses are the other. So he's trying to talk about the fact that this is a tax advantage vehicle inside of a whole life chassis, and the fact that the downside protection gives you the ability to not lose money. So you're not going to lose your money. You're going to be able to take advantage of compounding on a more predictable basis. At the end of the day, IULs, it doesn't work that way. When you lose money, yes, your money, it's not so clean. I could show you 10 years the policy could average a 6 to 7% indexing return during that period of time, but because all the fees and everything, the internal rate of return of that policy is still going to be under 2%. So then if you throw in a couple of years where it's zero in that 10-year time frame, that internal rate of return is going to go down, because on a 0 year, the principal is protected on the cash value, but you still have insurance charges, admin charges, all cost of insurance, all these different things that go into the policy. So those fees are getting taken out of it no matter what, and your policy has to be able to support that. So it's, he talks about, well, first of all, that's important to understand. Then he also talks about the marvel of tax favored accumulation. So I guess I skipped ahead a little bit. Taxes are just part of it, part of the conversations. And taxes do, I made a note here, taxes crush wealth potential. They just do. If you can figure out a way to minimize your tax liability throughout your life, that's super important. I talked about that in the last chapter. A lot of people, put money in 401ks, IRAs, any kind of qualified account where you defer taxes today in a low tax rate environment only to pay taxes in an environment that we quite frankly just don't know about yet. Is it going to be a higher tax rate environment? Are you going to be in a higher tax bracket? Where are we going to be at as a country, as a world? And what's going to be happening? And how is that going to work? So when you get into your distribution years, it's really important to know or make an estimation about where you're going to be, because that ultimately, I don't know the answer. Doug doesn't know the answer. No financial advisor knows the answer. You just have to think critically about where you are with your life, where you think the world's going to be, and make an educated guess as to what the best strategy there is for you to make for your future. That's really what it comes down to. At the end of the day, I found this interesting, a survey he found, 61% of baby boomers surveyed said that they feared outliving their retirement money more than they feared death. Well, it's a pretty sad state of affairs. But that was in 2010, right after the Great Recession, when the housing bubble happened and all that stuff. So people were living fearful. I bet you if you were to take that survey today, that number would be a lot different. People are a lot more confident. I don't think they're rightfully confident. I think they should be more scared now than ever. People who were in 2010, it just shows the psychology. 2010, the people who got wealthy were the people who were not scared, who saw an opportunity when the market was low. People were scared because of the fact that they weren't prepared for what was going on. They got smashed in the face and lost a huge portion of their wealth, and then were reactive and emotional in their decisions. If you can see ahead of the curve and anticipate these things happening, rather than be scared of them, you take advantage of them and you create wealth instead. So I'm just going to go through here. So there are two kinds of people in the world: those who pay interest and those who earn it. Actually, there's a third kind of person in the world, the one who understands leverage and is willing to pay some interest to earn even more interest. So this is the concept when people talk about why would you pay interest to access your own money. And the concept is pretty awesome. It works, I think better with whole life insurance than it does IUL, but the principle leveraging whole life insurance to access capital it works across the board. And it's something that if you haven't looked into, you should look into. I agree with that. You can see, once again, this is the second chapter in a row that I have a lot of green where I agree with the principles of what he's saying. My challenge lies in the fact that you need to make sure that you're on the right vehicle. That Index Universal Life is not going to work. So, sorry, hold on one second, guys. I gotta answer a text message really quickly. I apologize, but I gotta do this real quick because I had somebody just text me, and I have to handle it. It's about my kids. So there's that, and so at the end of the day, he goes into, there are 4 phases of retirement planning. This is all really good stuff. It's important to understand these principles. You have contribution phase, the accumulation phase, distribution phase. Contribution is you're saving money, you're putting money away. Accumulation, your money is going to grow. You get dividends, you get a rate of return, you get whatever you get. Distribution, you're taking your money out. It's retirement. Ultimately, you're not working anymore. You're just what you saved up, you're now pulling money out of to live off. And transfer. is when you die. You pass your money to the next generation. You want to make sure you transfer it and transfer as efficiently as possible to the next generation. Give as little money to the government as possible. All really good stuff. So when you look at a lot of this stuff, let's see what he's saying here. If you're like most people in an audience at our events, you might be guessing, what do you think the most important phase is to protect from taxes? So he's talking about, if you're like most people in the audience, you think that the contribution phase is the most important phase to avoid taxes, because at the end of the day, that's why they created qualified accounts. If I could delay paying taxes today, then it's great. But conventional wisdom kind of says that. But here's my problem with it, and I agree with him in his philosophy here. The most important thing that we have with our money, if you're educated with it, is control. When you put your money in qualified accounts, you're giving up control of that money. And so there's always going to be opportunities for all of us. The market is cyclical. It's not linear. There's always going to be opportunity points, inflection points in our life where in our working careers, when we're accumulating, when we're saving for our futures, there's going to be 4, 5, 6 times in a 40-year period when the market tanks, when we have huge buying opportunities and wealth creation opportunities. If we don't have control of our capital, if we need to pay taxes and penalty and whatever to access that money, if they're in highly illiquid and high risk accounts, that in those moments of time, you don't have the ability to take advantage of them, when you need to. So what do I have here? Accumulation or distribution doesn't matter if taxes remain the same. Oh yeah, so what he's trying to say though is that the transfer phase, or that distribution phase is gonna be higher. It's gonna be worse. The reality is we don't know. I don't like the way he talks about it in this book because, I don't like to tell people what's gonna be what. I have an opinion. I will be glad to share my opinion with anybody at any point in time. I do it every day. However, I'm not going to sit ever across the table from somebody and say, you need to do this because taxes are going up. I will sit here and I'll tell you all day long, I think taxes are going to go up. But I tell you, one of the biggest mistakes I made a long time ago was seriously underestimating the government's ability to manipulate the markets and through monetary policy, right? And I think we're in for some tough times. I think our national debt and our unfunded liabilities and all these things going on in our world are going to lead to higher taxes. I do. I think we're at a low long-term tax rate environment right now, and I think the nature of the beast is they should go up. But I'm also, fully aware now that politicians are dirtbags, and politicians are going to manipulate whatever they have to do, and raising taxes is basically political suicide. So in a world where we don't have term limits, in a world where government is just trying to get to that next election in 2-year cycles essentially, and the Democrats and the Republicans both are just doing that, they're both going to just manipulate things for their best interest. And I cannot see an environment, at least anytime soon, where raising taxes is going to make sense on any level. And going after the wealthy is just not going to work. So let me get to this. The top 5 takeaways. Here we go. I'm going to go through these. I got 3 that I agree with. So just like Denmark, kangaroo, orange, exercise. Oh, this is the predictability is the key, especially when it comes to financial strategies. And I made a note. This is exactly why the laser fund isn't the right product, because it doesn't create predictable results. And anybody that wants to take me to task on that, I will go to a debate with you live any point in time. Just email Chris@Life180 and we'll get into it. It'll be fun. Second, the 3 marvels of wealth accumulation can predictably provide opportunities for financial growth. The marvel of compound interest, the marvel of tax-favored accumulation, and the marvel of safe leverage. 100% agree with that. And I would say an IUL is not safe leverage. If it were, to recap, banks would allow you to use a cash value line of credit on an IUL the same way they do with a whole life policy, but they don't. So, and in total, the life insurance company's general account, which is designed to get the best safe rate of return possible, is only getting about 4%. So if these 6 to 7% assumptions inside of IULs were conservative and realistic, the insurance company would be using those strategies overall in their general fund across the board. They're not. It's just takes a little common sense to figure this out. Number 3, the 4 phases of retirement planning are contribution, accumulation, distribution, and transfer. Absolutely. You got to get the thing I love about a properly structured whole life policy, I made a note here, is that you get your money to perform multiple duties. You get to have access, liquidity use and control of your money while you're going through the accumulation phase. You can have it to access to beat inflation, have it in an account that'll beat inflation long term, and you have access. A lot of people, the problem is they look at IUL as an investment alternative, and that's what it is. That's why it entails risk, and that's why it's not safely leverageable. Whole life insurance is a banking alternative. It has those guarantees. It's not an investment. If you want to invest, you keep your money safe and you wait for those 4, 5, 6, whatever periods of time in your working career that you can double down in markets that are really good when the buying opportunity is better. That's how you make it work. That's how wealthy people get wealthier, and that's how people take huge catapulted levels forward in their wealth creation is in those periods of time. So number 4, the most important phase to protect from taxes is accumulation. I don't agree with that. Right now, I may agree that that's the case, but I don't like to just take this environment and make a rule on this environment. When the 401k was created, taxes were higher. So putting money into that tax-deferred vehicle when taxes were higher to take out today was better. So this is not a rule that I agree with. I think it's an opinion, and I think in today's environment, that may be the case. But I think that's for every single person to decide for themselves and what's your risk tolerance, right? So number 5, to sprint towards retirement, you want to be able to contribute after-tax dollars in a tax-favored environment, access your money tax-free, and transfer it income tax-free to your heirs on passing. I would agree that a lot of that is true. You want to be as efficient with your taxes as possible, but once again, the same as number 4, there are variables at play that you just have to be educated about and decide what your risk tolerance is and try to figure out where you're going to be in your future and kind of go from there. So anyhow, so here's what I'm going to do. If you have any questions, make them in the comment below. I'm happy to talk to you, happy to engage with you on any level about any of the comments. If you disagree with me, put them in there. I can back up every single thing I'm saying. I really make these videos because I know a lot of people who are interested in this strategy, interested in learning about IULs. I love a lot of the principles that are being taught in this book, but the vehicle is the wrong vehicle. And I can't sell anybody any life insurance. I'm not licensed. I used to be. I know all about IULs. I worked with one of the top IUL companies in the country. And I'm telling you, they can be right if you have the right expectations. They can be good. But when you realize what the realistic expectations for an IUL are, then you realize that why not just go with a whole life insurance policy? That's my problem with the way that they're sold is the way that people manipulate the numbers to make them look better than they are. And that in turn has the high potential to hurt the consumer who's buying the policy. So anyway, if you found value in this video, give it a like, please. YouTube loves that. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the bell. That way you get notified every single time I launch a new video. And as always, have a blessed, inspirational day, and we'll talk soon. Take care.